I once heard a man describe his wife in this way. From the moment I saw her, I was overcome with desire. When she spoke, I realized that someone had already formed a strong attachment to her. Despite her lack of intelligence, she was undeniably beautiful. I met Sam when she was fired for hacking into my client's computer network by uploading a video of a cute cat. Unfortunately, it turned out that Kitty was actually an evil, malicious lioness in disguise. She appeared to be in need of a friend, so I offered to transport the box of her personal belongings while the head of security accompanied her from the premises. I concede that I anticipated that I would encounter no difficulty in gaining access to her intimate apparel if we became friends. I soon discovered, however, that she never wore them beneath short skirts. Fast forward 6 months, her childlike simplicity and insatiable desire for sexual intercourse captivated me, and I proposed that she move in with me. 6 months later, we were married the night before our wedding. I took her hands and I vowed to be her champion, vanquishing adversaries and unlocking mysteries for her delight. I pledged eternal devotion and love, and demanded only one thing in return: absolute fidelity. If she ever betrayed me with another man, our marriage would end. There would be no second chance. I would destroy her and anyone else who incurred my wrath. I loved her, and I would never do this. Sam recalled the first 2 years of their marriage as so extraordinary that all their friends Sam assumed the role of the spoiled wife, spending her days engaged in sports or relaxation at the spa. We dined at some of Chicago's most esteemed restaurants on a near-nightly basis. I enhanced her physique through the application of designer clothing and jewelry. I was gratified by her admiration, yet she eventually expressed disinterest in our lifestyle. I attempted to dissuade her, even offering to fund her own business venture. And boutique, whatever she wanted. I replied that I would not be involved in the business, as I wanted to pursue other interests. Some time later, I learned that 2 divorced friends from the health club had influenced my wife's negative attitude. These women had lost their husbands to younger women and took pleasure in destroying happy marriages. They worked on Sam for several weeks. The 2 women continued to persuade my wife that I did not value her and that her path to freedom lay in securing employment and financial independence. Consequently, Sam began searching for a position that would align with her skills and interests. Given her physical appearance and the quality of her attire, she had no difficulty securing interviews. However, when she encountered challenging questions, she struggled to respond effectively. She was asked a series of questions regarding her office skills. 3 months later, she had undergone numerous interviews, yet she had not received any feedback or acknowledgement from the hiring entity. The form letter that I had sent to unqualified candidates simply stated that there were no openings for her unique skill set. One day, she returned home with a noticeable level of enthusiasm. She was barely able to speak, yet she was hired as a personal assistant. I inquired about a few basic details, such as who had hired her and what her job responsibilities entailed. Sam was unable to recall the name of the company, but she was confident that she could find it. The only information she could remember was the travel situation. I then asked her to search for the information. She proceeded to rummage through her belongings. A Gucci bag yielded a business card, which revealed that she would be working for Andrew W. Carter and Associates. The card was a simple rectangle of white cardboard, lacking any graphics or design elements. It simply displayed the name, title, and telephone number of Andrew W. Carter, the president and CEO. I was perplexed by the company's name and its apparent involvement in import and export. I embraced my wife and gazed deeply into her eyes. "Samantha, I have a concerning feeling. Let me investigate further." This led to our first ever dispute resolution, which I was reluctant to pursue. Her objective was to succeed, and she sought to do so by surrounding herself with a sense of admiration and adulation. In truth, she was merely a Barbie doll in his arms. Samantha was a woman of strong convictions. She was unwavering in her beliefs and refused to consider any opposing perspectives. She would rather endure a rebuke than admit her mistakes. I recognized the look she gave me as a sign that she was more willing to endure a beating than admit her wrongdoing. I hope that by the time she realizes the truth, it will be too late. On Sunday evening, I instructed my investigators to launch a comprehensive investigation into Carter. I received an email containing the complete dossier on Carter. It revealed that he was a minor importer of counterfeit products. He sold much of his business to dollar stores. Regional shows generated a significant portion of his revenue, and Sam was a prominent figure at these events. The current sales force consisted of men. Sales declined as Chinese manufacturers eliminated middlemen and began selling directly, a strategy that was particularly prevalent in the industry prior to the big show in New York. Carter convened with his sales team to discuss potential solutions. The company's future hinged on the success of this event. There was a consensus that the most effective way to boost sales was to have a woman with an attractive appearance and a short skirt represent the company. A blouse for the representative at the stand. Sam had a closet full of clothes that met the requirements of the uniform. It was evident that Carter did not require a personal assistant, but rather an individual capable of attracting clients. On Sunday, the atmosphere was relatively calm. However, by Monday morning, Sam was dressed in a manner that was the epitome of sophistication. I commended her appearance and extended an offer to accompany her to work. She expressed surprise and accepted my proposal. I presented her with an Italian leather briefcase, which she accepted with the remark, "You will be proud of me." Carter Warehouse has undoubtedly experienced a decline in its fortunes. It was an aged, the building's exterior was in a state of disrepair, even the signage had deteriorated. After a couple of minutes, Sam cast a nervous gaze around the derelict structure. She then leaned towards me and kissed me on the lips. This was an act she had been denying me since Friday. It is probable that this was the reason for her behavior. "I will pick you up at 5, she kissed me again and said, "I love you." "I love you too." I replied. This day dragged on less and less. I waited at the end of the block for the clock to show 5 o'clock. When this happened, I stopped in front of the main entrance. Several dozen men in cheap suits came out in a crowd. I surmised that this must be the sales department. After a few minutes, several older women left. Everyone was dressed for work in the warehouse. I waited 10 minutes before entering the lobby. Sam's laughter was heard after a considerable interval. I became aware of a bell on the secretary's desk and proceeded to ring it with considerable vigor. "I will be with you shortly," my new superior informed me as soon as I met him. I was immediately struck by his demeanor, which I perceived as somewhat disingenuous. Instead of extending his hand for a handshake, he merely smiled ingratiatingly. As we drove away, I cautioned my wife, "He is watching you like a lion watching a gazelle. Do not be naive. He is merely a skilled salesman. He is adept at selling wholesale products manufactured by slave labor. He is, in fact, quite proud of his products." Sam was silent until I pulled up to one of our favorite restaurants on Tuesday morning. Sam was attired in a manner that suggested she was attending a social event when I inquired as to her rationale for such attire in a workplace that was, by all accounts, in a state of disrepair. She informed me that she was aware of the most direct route to the warehouse and would be driving herself. She then departed without responding to my question or offering a kiss goodbye. That evening, she returned home visibly excited, having spent the day researching the product line. She had a bag full of miscellaneous items. I attempted to feign interest as she described each item in detail. In the second week, 3 unfortunate occurrences took place. Sam continued to alter her appearance and began going to lunch with Carter so that they could discuss the product line. She also began working late into the night with him to prepare for the New York exhibition. The final straw was when she stopped answering my calls because they were too busy with work. It all began on Thursday when Sam arrived home a few minutes before 10. I presented her with an ultimatum: either resign from your position or cease engaging in excessive dramatization. The training period following the exhibition will conclude, and the situation will stabilize. I implored her to resign and reiterated my willingness to invest in her own business, whether that be a store in a mall or another venture of her choosing. She reiterated her demand for autonomy and ignored 10 phone calls before finally returning home after 11 p.m. I was waiting at the door when she came in. Sam immediately became visibly agitated, as though I had somehow impeded her progress. I would never intentionally impede her career, which, I might add, is not particularly lucrative. The jewelry she is wearing is worth more than her entire business. Sam responded with a degree of animosity that I had not anticipated. In response, I inquired as to why I should trust you. "I have no reason to trust Carter. I have observed too many individuals like him who have attempted to take advantage of others. What are your qualifications for this position, other than your physical appearance? Is there a reason you dress like a model to investigate a 99-cent piece of plastic in a dirty warehouse? This behavior is unacceptable. There is a 3, I am attending a day trading conference in New York next week, regardless of your opinion on the matter. It would be prudent to adjust your expectations accordingly. Furthermore, it is likely that I will be living alone for an extended period. If I were to leave, there is a possibility that I will not be present when you return. This could potentially lead to the dissolution of our marriage. I am surprised that you suggested we plan how we will spend my salary. There are more prudent uses for that money, such as saving it for a vacation in Europe or Hawaii. Wherever you want. Europe, Hawaii. Are you insane? You make $13 an hour before taxes. You can't even afford to buy us a steak on your salary. Sam abruptly departed the room and proceeded to lock herself in the bathroom. We did not engage in any further communication over the weekend. On Monday morning, a limousine transported her to her destination. I kissed her for the last time and stated, "You have made your choice. I hope you can live with it." The individual in question did not respond. After a period of time, I arranged for a private investigator to take the seat opposite her and Carter on the eastbound flight. The individual in question flew in economy class. My associate guaranteed that he could provide audio and video recordings of their entire trip. I was naive enough to expect a phone call from Sam to say that they had arrived. My private investigator informed me that they were careless, acting in a manner similar to schoolchildren who believe they can evade consequences. Carter maintained physical contact with her, initially receiving objections from her but eventually gaining her consent. I nearly broke my phone in my agitation. He then stated that he would relay the observation to his assistant to avoid recognition. It took considerable time for me to refrain from contacting Sam and disclosing my knowledge of their actions. I had already attempted this course of action and it had not been successful, so I devoted my time to planning the second phase of my plan. That same evening, I received a detailed message from my detective. They had spent the majority of the day at business events. At 6 o'clock, they proceeded to their rooms and changed for dinner. I recognized the little black dress that Sam was wearing. The detectives had been instructed not to intervene unless Carter forced Sam to do something. They were to observe and document it. I was experiencing a great deal of distress, but I recognized that my wife had the right to choose our marriage of her own free will. Nevertheless, I was determined to make one final attempt to salvage our marriage. I viewed the video of my wife and her lover entering the restaurant together. I then called my wife, but her voicemail picked up. I then called the restaurant and spoke with Mrs. Samantha Weatherstone. She was not pleased to hear from me. I had worked hard all day, and now I was having dinner at the diner. I was outraged that she had the audacity to call me. To inquire, perhaps if you had responded to my calls or messages, would not have had to search for you. Samantha, I love you more than life itself, which is why I am offering you one last opportunity to save our marriage. I am aware that you do not frequent this particular diner. This is the first instance in which you have misled me, and I am prepared to pardon you if you inform Carter of your intention to resign. A first-class ticket will be awaiting you at the airport. Please, if you truly care about me and our marriage. The phone went silent. My wife terminated the call. My detective subsequently transmitted a video of Sam consuming alcohol with Carter. It became evident that the individual in question had overheard our conversation. He appeared to believe that he had made the correct decision when he hired Sam. He behaved as if she were his property, groping her while providing her with alcohol. An hour later, my associate sent a video of them entering his room. I was compelled to terminate my phone call because I was unable to view the footage from the cameras that had been installed in Carter's room. After imbibing a few alcoholic beverages, I listened to him express regret that her husband did not support her aspirations. He also stated that I was envious of her success and that I would become the most successful saleswoman in the industry if I remained with him. My wife, who was not as astute as she should have been, accepted his proposition and our marriage came to an end. I then contacted colleagues at the New York Convention Center, where Carter had already arranged for his vehicle to be delivered that morning and was awaiting its arrival. The stand was the largest and most luxurious at the exhibition, featuring a multitude of catalogs and hundreds of free samples. It occupied twice as much space as its largest competitor. The stand's video and lighting effects were superior. In a matter of minutes, the 40-foot container belonging to car disappeared from the loading dock. It would be sitting empty at a truck stop in New Jersey. I spent the night sitting in my chair, hoping Sam had come. The following morning, the detective informed me that my wife had spent the night in the suspect's room and had engaged in sexual intercourse. The detective also stated that the suspect had treated my wife in a disrespectful manner, suggesting that she was of loose virtue. I had heard her crying for almost the entire night, and I was struggling to control my anger. I made 2 additional phone calls, this time to a local number. In each case, I spoke with the same individual for approximately 1 minute. On the following morning, the concierge left a note for my wife under her door. It was addressed to Carter. My wife, I called your room all night but received no response. This suggests that the situation is irremediable. The detective indicated that she was in a state of distress, expressing remorse and requesting that Carter refrain from contacting her. I proceeded to have sexual intercourse with a woman of superior physical and intellectual qualities. Please dress and prepare for work. He picked up her dress and hurled it at her. Sam implored him to provide a return ticket, but he was unmoved. He then proceeded to verbally abuse her, calling her a stupid, and informed her that if she wished to return home, she would need to be prepared to attract his clients. Sam then turned up the volume, and he continued, I didn't force you to do anything. If you call the police, they'll look at how you were dressed and they'll know you're a. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a knock on the door. It was one of the sellers. Sam then grabbed her dress and hurried to the bathroom. Carter opened the door. Barras was holding Sam's lace bra. He wanted to ensure that Angelo was aware of the situation. Boss, we are facing a significant challenge. I was in the conference room to assess the situation, but there was no evidence of any wrongdoing. What do you mean there was no incident? That is precisely what it means. There is no evidence of any activity, not even a single box or sample. I spoke with the individual at the dock, and he confirmed that the truck was not there. Carter turned pale. He was unable to say anything for a moment. He then said, "Damn it." Sam took a moment to collect herself. She exhibited a lack of courage in calling me. It was evident that she had attempted to deceive herself, and she was successful. I did not respond, but the call was redirected to voicemail. Despite my awareness that this would have no impact, I was compelled to ascertain whether Sam would confess to his actions. I'm sorry, honey. I took sleeping pills and didn't hear the bell, she said. She then had the audacity to say, I love you. Please call me when you receive this message. After that, she called every 10 minutes. I chose to ignore everything. Instead, I contacted my lawyer and requested that he prepare the necessary divorce papers. Meanwhile, Carter was unable to secure any items from the exhibition, which opened 30 minutes earlier. He began making frantic phone calls. The police were unable to assist. Cameras installed at the cargo dock showed a white truck with no license plates or name leaving the previous night. They informed me that a detective would arrive in an hour or so to investigate. Carter called the warehouse and instructed them it was imperative to collect all the catalogs and brochures they had and put them on the next flight to New York. The haul was rather meager. Carter spent the day sitting on a borrowed bar stool in front of a cardboard sign he had made at an office supply store. His sales staff appeared awkward as they attempted to sell invisible products. Sam looked unwell as she stood alone in the corner, silently crying. Andrew Carter and associates quickly became the subject of jokes among those present. His Chinese competitors, whose booth was situated just across the aisle, greeted him with polite smiles and bows each time they distributed their vast assortment of samples. On the second day of the exhibition, a pallet bearing outdated catalogs and last year's obsolete products finally arrived. According to my informant, numerous individuals had approached Carter, yet none were inclined to engage with a representative who, by all accounts, instead of working for 3 months, his competitors secured the majority of orders by the end of the second day. Carter was ultimately unsuccessful in his endeavors and agreed to Sam's request to terminate their employment contract. He reassembled his trading team and instructed them to persevere in their efforts, even as he initiated a hasty withdrawal. He directed one of them to exchange their tickets and return home as soon as possible. Sam expressed discontent when she learned that the flight was scheduled to depart at 10 o'clock. The time was 12 a.m. She spent the night in her room, and the following day she sent me the flight information. Flight 901 was scheduled to arrive at O'Hare Airfield at noon. She then added, "I miss you," despite being seated next to each other. No one spoke. Carter was preoccupied with restructuring his line of credit, as he no longer had accounts receivable to support it. Sam maintained eye contact. She prayed throughout the flight that she could save her marriage. One advantage of working for a venture capitalist is that I knew people who could succeed without wasting time on paperwork. These individuals operate in the shadows and many of them owe me significant favors. The 2 phone calls I made earlier set everything in motion. I was aware that she would arrive by plane at 9, the time is 12 a.m. At the appropriate local time, I awaited the plane's takeoff and her subsequent deactivation of our mobile phones. I then proceeded to cancel all of our credit cards and transfer the entirety of our financial resources to a concealed account. By noon, the funds would be irretrievable. While a certain individual may assert her claim to half of the assets, she is unscrupulous and had the opportunity to salvage her familial situation without resorting to such actions. It was an unwise decision, particularly given that I had implored her to cease and waited until the last moment for prudence. I was then visited by a team of movers, who proceeded to pack my personal belongings for storage. I took all the jewelry that had not made it to New York. 20 minutes after the movers departed, a bulldozer and small crane were unloaded in my driveway. No questions were asked, they simply proceeded to turn my $500. The residence was transformed into a neat pile of rubble. Once the task was complete, the workers also disappeared into the fog, like the mythical Brigadoon. My detective was situated in the row behind Sam. He stated that neither of them spoke a single word during the flight. Upon landing, she attempted to turn on her cell phone. She became upon learning that her service had been terminated. Sam exhibited a high level of anxiety. She proceeded to traverse the departure ramp with haste, seeking access to a pay phone. In front of a gathering of departing passengers, she observed a man in a black suit bearing a sign bearing her name. Believing him to be the designated limousine driver, she inquired as to the possibility of borrowing his phone. "Borrow his phone? Are you Mrs. Samantha Weatherstone?" "Yes, it's me now. Please lend me your phone." He handed her a large manila envelope. "You have been served." "No, you can't take my phone." Samantha began to experience a sense of mental distress. "I don't see our driver," Carter stated as he approached. "Get the hell away from me or I'll scream." Samantha located a telephone and contacted me on my mobile telephone. She received a message indicating that the number had been disconnected. She then called my office number, which I had previously informed her was for emergencies only. She was informed that no individual by that name was employed at the organization. I had already commenced a new role in our Los Angeles office. Samantha became visibly distressed when she recalled the envelope. She proceeded to tear open the envelope and read the petition for the dissolution of marriage. Samantha collapsed to her knees, sobbing. She was subsequently presented with images of herself in the nude with her boss. She was unaware that his wife had been delivered and a set of identical photographs was taken at the same moment that airport security was alerted to the woman's health problems and a team arrived to provide assistance. One of the team members took her bags while the paramedics attempted to diagnose her condition. She requested assistance in taking a taxi home. She implored them to take her home before it was too late. They agreed and proceeded to meet her, subsequently catching a taxi. She entreated the driver to accelerate when they reached her lane, leaning forward to direct the driver on where to turn as they rounded the bend. Sam appeared perplexed, and then let out a blood-curdling scream as she came to understand that her home was no longer a viable location. The driver was attempting to extricate himself from the situation with the erratic woman and demanded his $45 billion. Fare froze, handing him her credit card. He then attempted to start the vehicle, but it did not function. She tried every card she had, but they were all rejected. If you do not have money, I will call the police. Sam began to rummage through her pockets and finally found the money. The driver placed her bags on the sidewalk and drove off. Samantha fell to the ground and was unable to breathe. Everything had disappeared, and all of her dreams had been shattered. Carter's day ended as badly as it had begun. Two of my colleagues proceeded to follow the individual in question to his residence on the North Shore. They were operating a borrowed pickup truck when the driver entered the store for a pack of cigarettes. They observed from the street as Carter exited the limousine and proceeded towards the front door with his shoulders slumped. He did not even have time to reach the front door before his wife jumped out into the street and loudly demanded that he leave. She then waved pictures of her and Sam having sex in his face. Carter was rendered speechless as his wife launched her attack. Two neighbors came out to see what was happening. Carter's BMW was parked in the driveway, and he was able to climb inside while she continued to bang on the windshield. "I'm going to divorce your cheating ass," she stated, picking up his suitcase and smashing it into pieces against the glass. Carter backed across the lawn to escape, seemingly unaware that he was being followed. Carter was followed. He proceeded to a bar and ordered a double clear scotch, which he washed down with another drink after consuming 3 strong alcoholic beverages. To facilitate his situation, he decided to visit his warehouse that same night. This was the office and warehouse of the Andrew Carter and Partners firm. The building was completely destroyed by fire, and the incident was the most significant news story for 2 days. It was the most spectacular fire in recent history, involving fire trucks from 7 suburban departments. One might imagine the flames licking the sky and clearing the earth of the stench of Andrew Carter. The fire was still smoldering the next day. Once firefighters were able to enter the premises, they proceeded to douse the blazing spots of the fire. However, the intense heat generated by the combustion of paper and plastic impeded their efforts, necessitating an additional 2 days for investigators to locate Carter's charred remains. A significant injury was observed in the form of a large hole in the skull. Additionally, a pistol was discovered in close proximity, bearing evidence of a single spent bullet. The bullet had missed its target, and the body was so severely burned that the coroner was unable to determine whether Carter had been tortured for more than 6 hours before he was allowed to die. Despite the extensive damage, the coroner was able to identify Carter only from his dental records. The coroner's inquest concluded that his death was a suicide. However, the sequence of events suggested that he was depressed about the missing truck and the complete failure of the exhibition. Additionally, his wife had kicked him out for having an affair. He then consumed alcohol, disabled the fire system, and set his warehouse on fire. As the flames approached his office, he placed the barrel of a gun in his. He then proceeded to commit suicide by asphyxiation. The insurance company also assigned a team of arson investigators to comb through the remnants of the massive building. Their forensic accounting colleagues subsequently confirmed that the fire was set with the intention of collecting insurance. Ultimately, however, they denied the claim to his widow, citing the inability of one man to control his sexual desires. As a result of this tragedy, his wife and children lost their home, 20 people lost their jobs, and I lost the only woman I had ever loved. As for the 2 witches who caused all this sadness, I did everything in my power to ensure that they would never cause anyone any further trouble.